Good afternoon. How are you doing? Just a couple of things. I had meant this to be a more informal briefing on the budget, so you've gotten this. This is sort of a summary, 4-page summary of the 81-page document we did earlier. Sue's worked really hard to try to put together our first 100 days, which is next week, actually. And then we had an update on the radio problem we had this morning, and on the I have a couple of legislative updates of some important legislation that's been moving forward in Sacramento for Oakland. And so I was going to start with the budget. As you know, the city of Oakland has sort of this pyramid of issues that we've raised at other briefings. We have federal deficit that we're not sure. There may be a close down in Washington this week. So we think, although the Republicans apparently are putting new cuts on the table, we think that we're looking at a total of $7 to $8 million of federal cuts. The next box we have is the redevelopment box, and that actually looks like it may be stalled. And though really Jerry has to the end of this week, beginning next week at the latest, to see if he can still get a compromise and get something on for a June ballot. Most of us think he won't, but the redevelopment, should that happen, is about a $28 million total impact on us. There's this decision on the police pension plan that I've been trying to get the city council to make a decision on, because it's a difference between having to cut $40 million and or cutting between $0 and $5 million if we bond out on the pension fund. And that's pretty important. It's one of the things I hope it will be discussed and finalized at the council workshop that we're having next Monday. Lastly, I have the structural deficit of $46 million, and what we say in here is that the way we think we're going to get there is that we're making somewhere between, last page, $20 to $25 million in departmental reductions, that we're hoping to get somewhere between, I would say that this was a conservative, but we could get maybe up to $24 million in employee contributions, depending on whether our reopener with the police department is successful or not. Lastly, we expect to do some one-time balancing things. There's some real estate, some property that we could sell, but that's not a good solution. It's only a one-time solution. And so, I was reading the coverage this morning on what happened to the parcel tax, so let me just start out with that. We were hoping, quite frankly, to get an urgency, because we think it's an urgency, because if it was not clear that Jerry was not going to have the consolidated election until about 2 weeks ago. And so we knew that we had to amend the original resolution that the council passed, which had okayed a consolidated election, but had not okayed a mail election. And the reason why we wanted an urgency is because, based on the schedule of a mail election, if we had approved it on Tuesday, we would know whether or not we'd won or lost the parcel tax by about July 5th. Our fiscal year starts on July 1st. And that would mean that even though we'll do a budget with we would have done a budget with layoffs, we would have done a budget had these things passed and those layoffs could have been stopped. Now we're going to, by going through a regular, not taking no chances, going through regularly scheduled council dates, so it's not a special urgency, and then it will require only 5 votes and not 6 votes, that 3 people can't hold it up indefinitely. It will require us to push that out a month. So probably even if we were to win, if we win the parcel tax, I'll probably have to lay off people during the month of July and maybe into August because of this delay. And that's what I was hoping to avoid. I've been on both sides of this. I've been a union rep, I've had to represent people who are laid off. It's really sad for people in their lives. It's very disruptive. You lose employees. So I think it's unfortunate, but I think that's probably the only way we can go. I want to give the community a chance. The community may turn this down and may say, no, don't just slash 26 million slash 36, 37 out of services in the city. I think not. I think that when people look at it and look at the policing levels, look at service levels, that people will give us this 5-year temporary amount. I could be wrong, but I think I wanted to let the citizens decide. I think when if some of you come to our meeting on Monday as we go through painfully in the budget what the amount of cuts in each department might mean and the services that we would lose, a chance to not have to make 11 million of those will look very good. So anyhow, that's what I have to say about that. In the first 100 days, next week it seems it's gone very fast. We've worked very hard to launch Oakland on a new footing. What I've been particularly encouraged about is the amount of civic engagement, the number of people who are volunteering in different programs, the fact that each of our town hall meetings so far have had hundreds of people in them and some of the biggest turnouts that people have seen in city meetings in a long time. And people are really engaged. People have been sitting in the workshops, people have been giving ideas, people are now working on us on the follow-up projects. I've tried to be as visible as possible. I probably do about 20 or 30 community events a week, and doing my best to thank people for being involved in the community and moving forward. As you've seen, we've been able to put together at least a package of the assumptions and the options about 6 weeks earlier than usual on a budget. Is it exact? Well, no, it's not. Are we working on the exact amounts? Lamont Ewell had only been our city administrator for about a day when I had to release the initial documents for the council, but we are spending pretty much and have been pretty much spending huge parts of our day every day since I was elected on first establishing a correct baseline for the budget. We found that a lot of the assumptions from last year's budget were off, both because the economy's gone either flattened out or done worse in some areas, and also we thought that some of the estimates of revenues in some areas were way too high. We've readjusted that. We think we have a good, solid baseline. We are telling the council that we think that this budget will be in deficit by a few $1,000,000. That will add to the $46 million that I have to cut, and we're still working out those figures. We'll have them for the council on the 11th. We have started negotiations with all of our unions. Mr. Reeds has joined us, so if he wants to add, I welcome to do that. We've started negotiations with all of our unions, including the ones that have closed contracts. That's the fire and the police. The third main point I'd just like to say is we've worked very hard to raise the profile of the city. So whether it was the McNeil-Lair report very early, or the fact that I probably do about 3 to 5 interviews with Chinese outlets internationally every month. We have this group, Positively Oakland, that's working consciously on reshaping the image. The good coverage we got to the marathon. I think people are taking a second look at Oakland. That was one of our goals. Probably the things that I'm most proud of is the beginning to work closely with the school district and working with agencies in a different way. Louis Cohen is here. I brought him here. We're trying to get the job postings so that we can change them. We're hoping by the end of the month that we, in a joint project with the school district, will be opening up some rec centers, some school auditoriums, eventually the library. Apparently we need to fill a couple of slots of staffing, so that might take a little longer. And several nonprofits and churches are joining with us to open up activities for youth on Friday and Saturday nights, which are historically when most of the violence happens in those parts of East and West Oakland, and we hope that that will make a real difference. We've been meeting jointly, the top cabinet staff from both the school district and the city, every month to try to better collaborate and coordinate. We have started the joint meetings regular basis with the county. And we're talking about how we may try to offset both the cuts against the elderly, when the state and the federal cuts and the local cuts, as well as preschool, which are the two areas, I think, of the human services budget that have been hardest hit across the spectrum. Lastly, we've been focusing on the neighborhoods in most need. I've picked three beats. Those will be my personal beats. I plan to keep walking in them, keep going to meetings in those areas and working with them closely. And as the mayor of Oakland, today or yesterday, we had legislation that went through committee that would provide the mayor of Oakland a position on the Metropolitan Transit Authority. I've been taking active leadership in the Big Ten group on the fight and redevelopment, and I'm going to represent myself on the League of Cities. So we've been trying to increase Oakland's role in the regional and statewide politics. So that's sort of a summary of the first 100 days. I'm sure you have more specific questions, and let me just mention the other major piece of state legislation that I've been working on over the years, from the days when I was a council member. Our bill, I forgot the bill, but Sharon's here, the Swanson bill, AB 184. As you know, with the events in Japan, we too live on a major fault. We too expect a major incident within the next 30 years, according to the U.S. Geological Society services. And we have been working on ways to help people fund their retrofits. So we have a bill going through with Swanson which would allow people to borrow money and pay back on their property taxes, very similar to what Berkeley did with solar energy. So we know that there's at least about 15% of our buildings in Oakland that are particularly vulnerable, that are soft-story buildings that we're trying to get to retrofit. And according to the federal estimates, were we to have an earthquake on the Hayward Fault tomorrow, we could lose up to 15,000 lives and about a quarter to a third of all of our rental housing in the city, because many of the rental housing units are soft story. So we've been trying to find alternative ways. This to me is like our Katrina. They knew that the dikes in Louisiana were weak. We know that there's a certain number of buildings in the city that need to be retrofitted, and if they are retrofitted, we're going to save lives and maybe save the buildings, and it's something that we need to do. So that's it. That's what I have for this week. I'll take questions.
Mayor, you had problems again this morning with the radios, the police radios, and you keep saying that it's resolved quickly. Why does it keep happening?
I think it's because it's an old system, and we've had them less frequent. Let me just say, I have a little chart, and we see how frequently we've had this. We haven't had one for quite a few weeks. Reagan's not here. I can tell you exactly. We haven't had one for quite a few weeks. We are in the media release we mentioned. We hope to be Reagan's here. I was just saying that we've been tracking the radio complaints. When I first got in office, we were having them like every week. We hadn't had one for a while. We've been fixing some towers and doing patches, but we're about to now transfer over to what's called P25, Platform 25. It's a brand new system. I suspect we'll have problems with that too, but it will not have a lot of the structural equipment problems that this old system has. We think will be converted over in the next few months. So we're not going to predict, because every construction project is always late, as I've learned as a public official, but we plan by, probably late summer, we're hoping to have the entire new system up.
But why does it seem to keep happening? And
it's an old system patched together.
And also, are you concerned? The officers say, it could cause
And
harm.
I absolutely agree. That's why we had the special teams, and why we had the company in to look at it, and why we did our best. And I don't know, Reagan, how many have we had in the last month?
In terms of, we actually meet every Friday to discuss radio.
Come on up. This is Reagan Harmon. She's my public safety policy person.
Hi. So we actually meet every Friday with regards to the radio issues. As Mayor Quan mentioned before, it is an old system. It's a very old system. And with old systems, you're going to have problems. And so when Mayor Quan came into office and we noticed that we continue to have these radio problems, we set up weekly meetings between OPD, our DIT staff, which includes also the director of our radio room. And we have developed protocols so that when issues do arise, we ensure that the appropriate people are notified and that the issues are resolved quickly. But again, when you have an old system, you're going to have problems. We know that. That's one of the reasons why we are moving towards a new system.